Alrighty, so let's have a look at some of the systems that we have going on here in a bit more depth. First one we're going to look at is the navigational whispers. So that is this system we have down here. So we have two things. We have the actual whispers and then a little sweetener, just a little horror type effect that we have going on. So it's a simple switch container, close, medium and far noises, and we've got a couple in each. So depending on the switch that we have set, we can have the close whispers, which are nice dry, there's no reverb, they feel like they're right on top of you. And then we go all the way up to the medium and the further ones, which are a bit distant, a bit reverby, just to give the player some indication of how far away they are from the objective, as well as the actual navigational orientating yourself around the level. So these are posted with an attenuation. They're placed 3D in the level to give the user some idea of stereo fields of where the sound is moving around them. So next it was a case of getting that sound in through an event. It's just one single whispers event playing both the sweetener and the whispers. The sweetener's just a little extra thing just to give it a bit more atmosphere. So coming into Unreal, got a single actor with the AK component, and that's posting the whispers event. And the switch is controlled here through two variables which we can get through the level blueprint when the user calls the function. So going into the level blueprint, this is the most complicated script that we have set up through the whole project, and that is this pink system down here. So what we have over the entire level is a nav mesh that allows the AI system within Unreal to guide itself around, and that's been set up so that it can travel all the way around the level, upstairs, downstairs, anywhere you like. And then we have a little target point here which we can move anywhere in the level again. And in a few simple steps, we get the path between the player's current location and that nav objective, and that's done through the nav mesh that we've got set up. We then export that as a series of vectors held in an array, and then we are going to go down and spawn that sphere. So the sphere spawns, and these variables that we have set up are going to control what we saw earlier in the sphere blueprint itself, and that is going to spawn the sphere with the desired switch, and then we start moving towards setting the sphere in motion. So we set the play rate between each vector, so obviously if you've got one vector that's half the distance of the next one, it's going to travel at a much faster rate or slower rate depending on how far it's got to travel. So we get that distance, and we have a time constant that means that it's always traveling at a certain speed, and then just over the course of one timeline we set the actor's location through a loop in the X, Y and Z axis, and it travels its way nicely along the route that's been chosen. So we can see that happening. I've made the actual sphere visible, which is not in the game, just so you get some kind of idea of what's going on. And if we just play the game, launch it, you should be able to see the sphere make its little path forwards. And no matter where you are in the level, that will find its way to that target. And right at the end, we check to see if the route's been completed, and if it hasn't been, then we reset that time constant and that play rate for that timeline and go all the way back and do it again until the number of vectors that we've traveled through equals the number of vectors in the original array that we set up through the timeline system. So our physical impact sounds, we have this chair here, and we've got some paintings upstairs. We'll fly off the wall or shoot up in the air to give a bit of impact to the jump scare that we're going to have in the level. So nice and easy and wise, we have a blend container containing 3 sub-random containers that have a few sounds in each. And this impact velocity RTPC we're going to set on the fly in Unreal to determine whether we have the soft impact or a harder one. Also along with that, we've got an impact volume that's going to go and control how loud the sounds we're hearing as well. So we can go all the way down from a nice quiet little impact sound to a full-on high velocity, high volume impact. I don't really want to go all the way up this high. It tends to peak, but somewhere around here will be where most of our impacts are going to take place. So these are controlled through a couple of events. We've got the impact, and then we have some little sweetener layers as well, some like hyper-real things that we only want to hear once, not every impact, but that's going to be things like, or Just little things that we can add to give a bit more of a hyper-real sense to our level. So on the actual chair itself, nice and easy, we're going to fire it off in a particular direction with an impulse. So we have random floats that we're going to choose for that impulse, so we don't get the same response every time. They are somewhat constrained. I don't want it flying off any particular direction. I do want it going a particular way-ish. And then we're going to post that little sweetener as well, so it's non-spatialized and it's not attached to the chair itself. On component hit then, so when the chair actually comes into contact with something else, we're going to get the velocity of it, and if it's over a certain amount, just so we don't get all, hundreds and hundreds of little sounds, we're going to clamp that range, set the two RTPCs, the velocity and the volume, and then we're going to post that impact sound. A short delay means that we don't end up with, again, 100 different sounds a second, because that can happen with impact events in Unreal. And just resets a do once, so we only get that at a minimum of every 0.3 seconds. Nice and easily called then in our Jumpscare blueprint that we have up here. We have our chair impulse from the chair blueprint, and that is going to end us up with a nice little jump scare sweetener when we go through this trigger box here. With some nice physical impact sounds. So then, the anatomy of the jump scare, the build up to it is just as important as the actual scare itself. We have to set some expectations and some tension for the player. So we're going to do that through building up as we go down this corridor. We're going to start to tighten the room, make things feel a little more claustrophobic, bring out as much of that background noise as we can, so that when the impact hits, we get it really profound. It's something the player's kind of tense expecting, so it just builds up the scare for the player a little bit. So we're going to do that mostly through switching RTPCs, and a lot of these RTPCs here are used to control things that we want for this jump scare. So things like the reverb sends. So as you go down that corridor, it's slowly going to become more cramped. You don't hear that large hallway reverb anymore. You start to get like really, really in on yourself. You're claustrophobic. You're in this small space, and something's about to happen. And the foley of the clothes, not necessarily just the footsteps, but the actual clothes foley that we have it separate to the footstep sounds. So down here we have the footsteps on their own, switching between the surfaces, and then the actual movement of the clothes. So we're going to bring that up, we're going to give the player a real sense that they're on their own, they're tight in this environment, and that is going to lead us down this corridor, starting at this trigger box. And the closer we get to this little note here, just for a reference of location, we're going to do a few things. We're going to start to get a tick every second once we've passed that trigger box, and then we're going to start updating our RTPC values, and that's going to be done solely by the distance between the player pawn and the note. And we're going to have these map range clamps controlling things like the small reverb size, the large reverb size. The ambience volume drops, the foley on the clothes comes up, the footsteps drop a little bit. I found them a bit distracting, so I added that in. And then when we hit that trigger box, again, coming back to that, the chair flies in the air. And then over the course of 4 to 6 seconds, all the RTPCs return to normal. So we can see that as we go through this trigger box down the end. We can hear the ambience in the background, we can hear the reverb on the footsteps now if we listen. And the closer we get, that's going to drop out. That ambience is almost all gone now. Now we're in a position where we're really tight and claustrophobic. We can really hear our clothes moving, and we can hear the footsteps are nice and dry, and we're just going to cross this trigger box. I've got this physical impulse, and then we're going to go slowly back to normal.